I'd like to introduce Felipe, Ramanzini, Matthew Baker, and Gabriella Rodriguez from Florida Polytechnic University, and they'll be presenting People Ruin Everything.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. This is Team 1080, and we will be talking about our scientific and logical processes for our differential equations model research.
As Anna said, my name is Gabriella Rodriguez. I'm majoring in computer engineering.
And this is Ramanzini. I am majoring in environmental engineering.
I'm Matthew Baker, and my major is mechanical engineering.
So we first came across the SCUDEM competition during our Calculus 3 class. And my professor at the time was Dr. Rumpf. He made an announcement about it. They're going to host an informational meeting on the competition. And so on the same day, I asked Matthew, who was also in the class, and then Gabriella, to see if they wanted to check it out.
The meeting was slightly brief, but in it, Dr. Rumpf and the other professors gave us an overview of what we needed to know about SCUDEM via an informational PowerPoint. This PowerPoint included the challenge period, requirements, and the format for submission.
So at first, my teammates were a little concerned. They thought the time commitment might be challenging, considering we only had 3 weeks, and they felt that they lacked experience with mathematical modeling. I reassured them, though, that after the differential equations class that I took, I could help guide them towards learning new and applicable skills that they could use for both of their majors.
And we were also confident that we could take this home first because we're friends, and we were sure that we could have a good workflow. And because our majors work different areas, we also thought that we would have a good skill set that would be applicable to multiple parts of the problem, from research to mathematics and then also coding.
In addition, it helped that the math department held a meeting to give us a crash course, introductory lesson in differential equations modeling. This included the Lakeland model as an example. This later became the model that we used as a basis for answering our selected problem.
So as soon as the challenge began, my friends and I gathered up together to look at the prompts that were given to us. We wanted to select one that we felt confident about and then also had a good background in and wanted to have fun with. From the moment that we saw prompt C, People Ruin Everything, it immediately drew our attention. It was relatable and it had a lot of examples. We had heard a lot of articles about, animals like dolphins returning to rivers, or animals basically running throughout the streets during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we knew that we had a lot to go off of when it came to the concept of humans interfering with animals.
So we quickly and unanimously decided on taking prompt C. And immediately after that, we also set a timeline with milestones so that we should keep working a little bit every day to keep us on track without actually compromising on academics, and also keep making progress on the model.
We ended up actually getting really into the research and spending time both with each other and on the project, working on it every day. It essentially became like our shared custody child. The first week, we chose to spend deciding what animals we wanted to study, and then the modeling began. We first chose a differential equation as a basis, and then added the parameters based on our needs.
So how we began was, we aimed for a scenario that would be both familiar and possible. Our system included at least 2 animals that interact with the usual predator-prey dynamic. Various urban animals were considered until we eventually found great choices. Our most realistic depiction that we found were pigeons and hawks.
And once we selected those animals, we conducted some research to see how they actually behave in urban scenarios and how humans and hawks would interact with humans in real life. So we could find a lot of abundance and media of stories registering those kind of interactions, and we could use those as guidance to what the model should look like.
At first, we thought that the competition would be more of a solving equations type of deal, and tried to start with an equation from the Simio differential equations book and then work backwards. But then we realized that this was really more about building a model from the ground up, not solving one. So it didn't really necessarily need to be solved, just invented and created and visualized.
So we started using the logical terminal of the predator-prey, which would start something like this. The x over dt we represent as like the rate of change in population of pigeons, which is dependent on exponential growth based on how many pigeons there are in the system. But the decay rate is based also on how many hawks there are, because the more hawks there are, the more they're gonna be hunted down. And likewise, the rate of change of population of hawks, their growth rate is based on how many hawks there are, on exponential growth, and also on how many pigeons there are, because the more pigeons there are, more food is available and the better they can procreate themselves. While the decay rate is based solely on themselves. And so to add the human population to the system, to the dynamics, we consider the human population as a basic logistic model growth with a growth rate of k and a certain carrying capacity of m. So the way we thought, the more humans there are in the system, they're going to hunt down hawks more. Therefore, this would reflect on their decay rate, being based on the human population. Because the more humans there are, the more they're going to be hunted down. And likewise, because humans end up producing lots of food in ways that is accessible for pigeons, that would influence on their growth rates. Because the more humans there are on the system, the more the pigeons are going to procreate. And it was important for us to keep the model somewhat simple, because this took a lot of our thought into the making. So we wanted to make it simple enough so we could work only with this.
Subsequently, the constants were calculated mainly by trial and error. After that, the last step was recording the presentation. We were working on the presentation simultaneously, so it didn't feel like a chore that had to be done all at once in the last minute.
We also considered which assumptions we could make so that the meeting would be easy, the modeling would be easier on us. For example, the human population was limited to a constant piecewise function. This made it easier for us to split the model into the three phases. Before, from 0 years to 250 years, during, from 250 to 500, and after, from, sorry, not 500, 750, from 750 years to 1,000 years. Essentially, it would work like this. Now, because the human population was essentially a constant, we basically created a piecewise function with a base population of 1,000, where where there were 0 humans inside the system. Suddenly, there were 1,000, and then there were back to 0 humans. This sudden entry and exit essentially created some sudden changes in both the pigeon population and hawk populations. But before we go over that, let's go over the development of anti-predator traits. So we chose to define the anti-predator traits with a numerical value. And this numerical value could theoretically be any number. In this case, since I'm just reviewing, I'll just say it's 1,000. Essentially, the pigeons began at max capacity with all of their skills. But then when the humans arrived, their skills depleted there, as well as in addition to their anti-predator traits, because the more that the humans essentially gave them food and spoiled them, the more they became complacent. After that, our model essentially leveled off at around 250, meaning that although the pigeon skills were significantly diminished, they were not completely gone. There was still hope for them, all right? Then regarding the populations, the pigeon and hawk populations essentially remained normal at first, both of them being very in tune with each other until the humans arrived, at which point the pigeon population began going up, of course, because they were being coddled, and the hawk population decreased because they were being hunted. After that, after the humans left, the pigeon population decreased slightly, and the hawk population increased slightly. Their system, their pattern of being had restored a little bit, but both of them managed to be significantly worse off than they were before. To be more specific, The pigeon, I'm going to note two specific events that occurred in the model. The first being what I like to call the pigeon, where the growth condition for the pigeon population essentially multiplied. It increased from 2.2 to 2.4 here at the 250 mark. And then this essentially did not change. However, the population of the pigeons was more affected by the constants that affected the hawks. So the hunting of the hawks essentially resulted in their death rate slight doubling. It went from 0.7 to 1.4. And as soon as the humans disappeared, it went back to its normal amount because they weren't being hunted down indefinitely. However, their growth also increased because they suddenly had a much larger population of pigeons to consume without having to worry about being hunted. So their growth essentially went at the 750 point from 0.002 all the way up to the 0. With that being said, what the results here show is essentially that humans do indeed disrupt the concept of the balance in the hawk and predator ecosystem. However, when humans disappeared, although the pattern of hunting remains a little strange, it does have hope of possibly returning to normal over a longer period of time.
So after deriving our beautiful graph and our sophisticated models, we decided to build a presentation by downloading a free template online. As our research continued, we would fill up the slides with information. We also had quite a bit of fun expressing our creativity with photos and icons that went with the theme. We utilized Google Docs really well. In addition, as we started to create the model, we documented our thoughts in a shared document and later refined it into a scripted presentation. Each slide had its connected script and topic.
So we ended up doing lots of practice runs, both in person and online. And because it was very important to us that the lines were professional and clear, but still easy enough that we could recitate them easily. And there was also less focus on getting every word exactly, as well as it turns into the sectional scripts to fit our communication styles better.
Once we had our final recordings complete, I used a program called Clipchamp, which was already included on my laptop, to edit the clips together. I was able to move the audio and video files around so that they sync up better and eliminate any awkward pauses, while also keeping our presentation clear and concise.
And that was how we developed our model and the whole process of the competition. Thank you all for listening to our presentation. And are there any questions?
That was very nice. It was really lively. I enjoyed listening to your presentation. Lots of energy. It looks really interesting. I particularly like the way you just kind of sketched things out as you were doing them.
Thank you. It was more practical to do that than to share the screen, we thought.
Well, it also made it seem more dynamic, more like it was actually a conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good call.
Yeah, this is really a nice talk. I'm wondering how much time did you spend to decide? I understand there are 3 topics, right? You can choose. So how long did you spend on deciding which one to work on before you proceed? Was it hard?
It was fairly quick to decide on the problem. We decided right on the first day, we sat down together on Discord during the night and reading all the prompts together. And on the first 2, I can't remember what exactly
One
they were.
of them was about a fish, like the angle of a fish's jaw. I'm not a fan of fish.
So we sort of made the assessment based on familiarity, because we had already seen several differential equations that had populations and carrying capacities, and we felt that the third model would be more similar to what we had already seen prior, as opposed to the things with the fish and another one, which I believe had more advanced topics like fluid mechanics and things like that. So we sort of made that decision pretty quickly.
And it also helped that it was easier to visualize what would happen in that case. So it was fairly quickly, instantly with settle processing.
That's good. Good to know. And I guess an easy question would be, do you plan to join again next year, or you think?
So
Yeah.
That's great. Good to know.
It was very challenging for us. And once we got the email that we got an award for this, it was very encouraging to try it again, to try and do it again.
Our spirits were up. Yeah.
In addition, I am now not the only member of this team who took a differential equations class. So this competition, as you know, took place in the fall, and I had taken differential equations just the summer before. But neither of my teammates have taken the class. Now they're actually both taking it.
We're in differential equations.
And the coursework has been modified at our school to include coding with MATLAB and things like that. So we are no longer like basically clueless about how to code. Now we're they're learning how to do things, and I feel that that's definitely going to help us.
Yeah, we're having lab activities every other week, I think, if I'm not mistaken, which use MATLAB to both calculate and also to solve models that we developed. So those skills are definitely going to be helpful on the next one.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, do we have any other questions? Let me review the chat real quick. No new questions. All right, we're good. Yeah. Thank you guys for having us. We really, we've had a lot of fun talking about, our experiences, how we went along with this, and it has definitely helped us to understand more of how real world mathematical modeling works.
It was interesting. At first, my first thought was that mathematical models were found. You would do research, and then you would suddenly find a formula that works magically for everything, but that's not quite the case.
This experience was
What kinds of topics would you be interested in for the next year?
Can you say that again?
They want to know what topics we want to do for next year. So what would be?
Well, I think I would be interested in either also population dynamics, but also with the chemical kinetics. We also have seen on the mixing tank model. I think building some problems based on that would be very interesting.
I personally would find models based in the field of psychology interesting.
There's definitely a lot you could do with that. The concept of people and how they interact with each other, especially in societies. You could give them certain certain qualities, for example, like monitoring something like, I don't know, aggressiveness in populations, or maybe something like what's it called? You could also go over other kinds of differences as well. Something you could go into something like phobia, something that has to do with sleep, maybe like REM cycles. Those are oscillating, so you can definitely use some kind of
sinusoidal model.
Yeah, like trigonometric functions for that.
How about things like the spread of misinformation and disinformation?
Misinformation.
I see.
Like Instagram algorithms that they, people spread misinformation and things like that. I know that nowadays you could definitely include some kind of factor for peer checking, because I know that's the thing that Instagram does, that they will fact check certain things and they'll let you know if something has been flagged for misinformation.
That would be quite the challenge to me.
Yeah, maybe a little bit difficult.
Math and the social science fields be really interesting, really challenging, given how complex human interactions are. I definitely think their applications would be just as interesting, if not more interesting, than more of the life science differential equations modeling.
So there's a message on the chat. Let me see. That's a major idea. You often wouldn't actually find social consume because Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, that's the one also my calculus 3 professor, when he was on the informational meeting, he said like a sentence that's stuck with me throughout this whole process, that are all models are wrong, but some are useful. So based on that assumption, we worked through.
Thanks again for a great talk.
Thank you very much.